Hello everyone again. This is the next video that I would like to show to you. Uh, I was kind of inspired for this game by my stay in the Netherlands. So I will basically show you how to, let's say, dismantle the Dutch defense, which actually is very annoying for many d4 players, and it's very difficult to cope with. For some people it seems kind of counterintuitive, so I will explain the very interesting way that I found a long time ago, and I've been playing it a lot, achieving, I think, very good results. So let's just see that. So the Dutch defense starts with the move d4, which of course is a move that I mostly show to you in my games because that's the move I usually play. And now oftentimes you'll see d5, and it's absolutely no problem for me. Then I can go for my favorite London system, or for instance I can go for c4, which is the Queen's Gambit declined or accepted depending on what black answers. But black can also try f5, which is the Dutch defense. And well, it is a move which is not very common, yet still it's hard to cope with, because it takes the, let's say, the flank pawn to control some of the center. So you can see this square is now being controlled by the f pawn. However, this move has a serious downside to it. Mainly, this diagonal is now weak, and the path to the king is open, so some of my pieces could potentially attack the black king there. It has to be said that it's hard to take advantage of it, and normally what will happen is, for instance, after knight f3, knight f6, g3, e6, bishop g2, let's say, now here black actually has two ways of playing. This is bishop e7, castles, d6, c4, castles, knight c3. This is the mainline Dutch, which is generally very aggressive. Black is trying to go with d5 and perhaps queen e8, and then to the king side and launch the attack, which could be very dangerous for white. And even though like the engines really like this position, I don't think it's so intuitive for the players, for the human players to play, and I personally don't like playing it. Also, in this position there is another post system for black that you also need to know if you want to play the mainline Dutch, and it's d5, after which you play c4, c6, and this structure is known as the stone wall. It's very difficult to break, so black's position is solid, and even though he does not have any activity, he is very solid, and it's going to be very difficult for you to win such a game. For instance, you can play knight c3, bishop e7, castles, and here your plan, for instance, may be to advance the pawns on the king's side, so you can imagine b4, a4, b5, maybe trying to do something like that. Yet still it's sort of uncomfortable. It's not very intuitive, and it's not obvious how to break this strong pawn structure. That is why after f5 I would like to present a simple solution which simply denies all of these issues. You simply try to take advantage of black's weaknesses immediately by sacrificing the pawn by playing e4. Now, this is known as the Staunton Gambit. It's named after the 19th century master Howard Staunton from Great Britain. This gambit may seem a bit strange because, okay, you're giving up your central pawn, and for now you get nothing in return. Yet, it still has great potential. Let's see that. Now you play knight c3, you simply attack this pawn, and well, black will most likely defend it. So okay, he may play knight f6, this is the main line, but let's just see what happens if he plays d5, which seems pretty solid at first, but now actually white is getting very good position after queen h5 and this is check, and also attacking the pawn on d5. So let's say after g6, queen takes pawn, knight f6, and queen get exchange. Now white is not down a pawn anymore, and you have to see that these pawns are doubled. This king has lost the right to castle, so white has everything he needs to play this endgame and aim for win. That is why usually black plays knight f6, after which you play bishop g5. And this is actually what I very much like in this position, because it is very simple for you to win this pawn back. And actually, if you really don't like to be down a pawn, you can win this forcefully, regardless of what black plays, because black still cannot go d5. Because if he goes d5, you just take on f6, and after he takes back, you just play queen h5 check, and yet again win the pawn on d5. So in this position there has been a lot of, well, let's say ways for black to try to not preserve the pawn, but preserve a good position. And they tried many moves in this position, so, well, let's discuss some of them. If e6 is played, now you can see that this pawn can be freely taken with a knight. The knight cannot recapture because, well, that will lose a queen. The common line of this is bishop e7, simply breaking the pin, after which you take the knight and play knight f3. And even though you can see that black has a bishop pair, which is surely to his advantage, but in a moment after castles, bishop d3, knight c6 and c3, you can see that white has better control of the center, white has more pieces developed, white can choose where to castle. He can go both kingside and queenside. Black has already decided where to go. And in general, white may try various plans. Let's say after black plays b6, tries to develop this bishop, then you can just play h4. And oftentimes you will like to put one of these knights here, because if you remove this knight, then your queen can come into the attack, and if you remove this knight, then this bishop attacks h7. And there has been many interesting games here, very attacking ones. White scores really well in basically all possible games. So I think I like these positions. They tend to have a good attacking potential for white. Now let's discuss d6. d6 is, even though it's quite accurate, I would say that it's not very principled, and it doesn't really make sense to me, because it does not take any effort to control these central squares. Maybe this one, but it's pretty insignificant to my mind. So after that, you as white play queen e2, and you simply put pressure on this pawn on e4 again. But this is not everything, however. Okay, actually, you can see that generally they play this with the intention of playing bishop to f5. After which you can play queen to b5 check. And now you see the problems, because now the bishop is attacked, the king is attacked, so the bishop has to drop back, and you can take on b7, which after, let's say, knight c6 can potentially be uncomfortable. Of course, black is by no means lost here, but he lost a pawn, he still has doubled pawns here, and his king is far away from finding any safety. So let's say here you could castle, and say if black puts his rook here, he can get some initiative going on this b-file, yet I still think that white's position is far more comfortable than black's. Okay, let's go back. Now let's discuss briefly after knight, in this position, let's discuss knight c6, which actually has been the main line for a very long period of time. And it's not so clear how white gets the advantage, but there are two rather reasonable ways of trying to do that. Let's say after d5, knight e5 is played, and then queen e2 again. The other way of playing this position is with queen d4, which is also pretty reasonable, but queen e2 is not any worse. You again put the pressure on this pawn, maybe on this knight. So usually actually the main line is knight f7, after which you don't move this bishop, but you play h4. Again, trying for these attacking ideas. You say, please take my bishop, because that would open up my rook towards your position. So surely that would be fantastic if you could get that. Now actually the main line here would be something like c6, after which you would castle queenside and simply develop all of your pieces at nearly no cost, because you have given up a pawn that you're going to get back eventually. You have two attackers and they have one defender that you can eliminate at any point. So you will have no problems and you can get this pawn back anytime. Going back to this position. Now, there are two moves that the engines and the humans consider best. There is the move c6, but, well, to my mind, that's a little bit of gambling there. Because here white actually should play f3. And, okay, now black has a choice. They can play d5, which is the move recommended by the engine. However, they could also try to take the pawn and claim that, okay, I am a pawn up and my position is fantastic, and they say play d5. They say, okay, I have a strong grip in the center, I am pawn up, what else do you want? Well, okay, maybe he is, but you have so many pieces developed. You will soon get your king castled, either kingside by developing the bishop or queenside by developing the queen. And his king is not going to get castled anytime soon, especially because of the fact that you're still attacking and attacking. For instance, you can play bishop d3 here, and okay, let's say he wants to develop in some way, I suppose, so they can play, for instance, like bishop g4, but here h3 and bishop h5, and now you can simply just castle, and now you have all of these pieces, all of these in the action. Maybe not this knight, but you get the idea. You just put the queen on e2, rook on e1, and all of your pieces are suddenly attacking his king, which is far away from castling. And this really might be uncomfortable. So this is very dangerous to take on f3. That's why they usually play d5. Yet I'm still not sure whether that's good or bad. The move that, well, most people would play is probably taking the pawn here. It is also possible that queen e2 is a good move. Of course it is. But I rather prefer taking this pawn off. And after d takes e4, now let's say queen d2, and okay, let's say they just even defend this pawn even more. They want to hang on to it. But then you play knight g2 e2, you go to g3, you attack the bishop and the pawn, so that everything is safe and that you can pick up this pawn eventually. Okay, and now another very main line, which is g6. g6 is very simple idea in mind, because now the current threat is that if this knight is not there, you can play queen h5, oh, not that way, and check the king. Exploit the weakness that white has created on move 1 by moving the pawn away from the f7 square. So the g6 actually, this move g6 actually aims to stop that. Now this square is protected forever and ever, and you will never get this king checked. But check this out. Now you go h4, and h4 is aimed simply to go h5 and break down that structure, which may be very bad for black. I actually even showed one of my games in this on this channel in this particular variation, where my opponent played d5 and said, yes, I'm pawn up and my position is generally fantastic, but you know, he got some f3 idea. But also you could play h5, like this is really so simple. h5, simple attacking chess. Now the best move actually is either bishop f5 or bishop g7. If your opponent tries to take it, then he's actually even losing, I would say, after rook takes. And let's say if he recaptures the rook, then you just take on h5 and the king is forced to go to d7. And even though you sacrifice an exchange, well, your position is fantastic and this king is a real clown, I would say. So yeah. So most likely they will play something like bishop f5, after which you can either take on f6 or, for instance, go knight h3, knight f4 and exert pressure on this g6 square, which is often the theme actually, placing knight on h3, or not here, and on f4 to then attack g6, which is a very sensitive point, I have to say, because there are not many pieces to defend it, only this bishop and this pawn. If he moves this rook here to defend, then this rook is not very great. Okay, so not this line. Okay, so after this h4, there has been many ideas, but of course d5 is the main one. In here, I can also recommend going f3, but after bishop g7, you have to realize that in some positions, let's say after you take, and then they take with a knight, these positions are somewhat simple and it's not as easy to get this pawn back, so it's not really to be recommended. The recommended way of you playing this position is h5, after which, okay, let's say they go bishop g7, then you can go h6 and they have to go back bishop f8, and well, you just move this pawn up the board, control the whole king side actually with this pawn for absolutely nothing, because they wasted a lot of time developing the bishop. You see, you pushed your pawn so many times and you're still up a tempo in development. You have two pieces developed and your opponent has one, so that's really to your advantage. Even though he's up a pawn, this is not a worthy investment to my mind, and the engines usually tend to agree with me on that matter. So let's say also they can play like bishop f5, but then you can also simplify to something like this. After g4, you can really get this pawn storm rolling on the king side and eventually destroy black there. So I think these are all the lines of the Staunton Gambit. I of course did not explain them in a great detail here, because I just want to give a general impression of how this opening works and what are the main themes in it. But what I really like about this opening is actually that normally if you play a gambit, which gives you are down a pawn, but you have an activity, a lot of activity that then allows you to win quickly. But in this case, if you're not really comfortable with being down a pawn and attacking, if you're a bit more cautious, then you can easily get your pawn back and just play a normal position. So it's a very flexible opening, I would say, that anyone could play, and can be very scary for people who play the black pieces, because they often do not realize that after this f5 e4 takes, knight c3, they often even do not realize that d5 is a bad move, and they often play it. I have to say that on the beginner or not very advanced level, they do that all the time. So this gambit is very effective, and that's why many people who play the Dutch defense may try to avoid it and trick you to the Dutch defense via the other move order by playing e6. Now, oftentimes, if you want to play a Queen's Gambit, say accepted or declined, you play c4 and then oops, they play f5, and suddenly you're in the Dutch defense, and you cannot play Staunton Gambit anymore because there is an inclusion of the move c4 that is not really helpful in that gambit. So that's a trick that many Dutch players do to you, but there is one simple method to avoid it, and what I think should be recommended is that you just go e4 immediately. Of course f5 is not possible, but you have to realize that you transpose into the French defense after d5. But there is a simple recipe to play the French defense. You can play knight c3. And here black has, well, let's say 3 options. One of them is to take, which really does not do anything to you. You can see a lot of resources about the Rubinstein variation and how to get the advantage with white in the Rubinstein variation. This is really nothing serious to you. You shouldn't be worried. There is a bishop b4, the Wiener variation, which, okay, you have to understand some of the lines, especially the main line, which looks basically like that. And it's very aggressive because black is going to put a lot of pressure on your c-pawns and on your king in the center while you are trying to go to g4 and attack on the king side. Very aggressive variation, but if you just simply get to know some of the Wiener variation lines by heart, then it shouldn't be really a problem. The main line French goes after knight f6. I recommend bishop g5. Usually they go bishop e7. There is also this McCutcheon variation, but it's not anything that I would be afraid of. I would rather play e5 and after h6 simply take on f6, and after they take back I can take on g7, rook g8. This is a comfortable position that I think is understandable for white players, even those who do not study these openings seriously. So that's why usually black goes bishop e7, after e5 they have to go knight d7. And here you play h4, which is the Alekhine-Chattard Gambit. I may actually do another video about the Alekhine-Chattard Gambit because it's a very aggressive line, after which, well, if black takes this pawn and is greedy enough, you actually have a lot of ideas of maneuvering your pieces to the axis rapidly and simply destroying your opponent. I'm not sure if that what I say is 100% true, but I saw a game of AlphaZero, the best chess, let's say, computer software. Well, actually it's a AI, so I don't know how should I call it, but it lost a game in this gambit with black. So that just shows you the potential of this line, that the best possible thing that plays chess lost in this variation. So you can just imagine. I can show you some of the lines to demonstrate how dangerous it is. Let's say after knight h3, black retreats with a queen to e7. Now you go queen g4, attacking the pawn on g7. Now let's say they play g6, and in this case, well, you can make many moves. Let's say you just castle, which is fair enough. Now they may want to go c5, but this is never a good idea before you play a6, because you always have this knight b5 coming to either one of these squares and really attacking. If black ever, by the way, if black ever tries to castle in these lines, this is never good. You just go knight g5 and you already built a lot of pressure on this king side, and castling will most likely lose the game for black. I will not demonstrate all the lines in detail. I may devote another video for that, but you can look it up for yourself. There are a lot of resources in the internet that show how to play the Alekhine-Chattard Gambit, which might be a useful way of dealing with such move order that some people may try to get you in. So just to briefly summarize, in this case, if they try to trick you, play e4, and then you transpose into the French defense, in which you can either play the Alekhine-Chattard Gambit that I recommended to you, or if they play something else, you can play the Wiener or Rubinstein variation, which should also be fine for you. Now, when it comes to f5, of course, we play e4, and we are happy to enter the Staunton Gambit, in which we are never afraid of losing a pawn because we can always get it back. And but we don't have to. We can simply play for activity, for attack, and this is again one of the lines just to quickly demonstrate how rapidly are our pieces developed, how aggressively are we moving our pawns, and what our intentions really are. So yeah, I hope you found this video very interesting. If you want to add something, maybe ask some questions, then please do so in the comment section. And see you in the next video. Bye.